Terry and Kyle and Brian, I mean, they are constantly nagging me with different opportunities and thoughts and constantly searching and evaluating and looking. So every day you come to work, you just don't know what's going to happen. And it's that feel of obsession when these guys got it at a very high level.
The Atlanta Falcons have undoubtedly been one of the most interesting teams to follow along this offseason. Coming off of a 7-10 season in 2023, going into that year, there was a lot of people that believed in the Falcons to be a playoff team and also potentially win the NFC South. And a big reason for that was the abundance of talent all across the roster. On offense, Bijan Robinson, Drake London at wide receiver, Kyle Pitts at tight end, an offensive line that was very, very formidable. And on the defensive side of the ball, still some star power in Grady Jarrett, Jesse Bates, and AJ Terrell. The big question mark for the team, though, was the quarterback position. Desmond Ridder was the starting quarterback going into the season with Taylor Heineke as the backup. And I feel like for most NFL fans, and even if you were a rational Falcons fan, you probably did not think it was going to end super good. Ridder, a former third-round pick, really hadn't shown too much to be super optimistic about leading up into the season. And as it turns out, you do need to have a functional quarterback to be a playoff team. It felt like the Falcons were in a lot of games last year. They were very, very competitive, but the quarterback position failed them time and time again. Arthur Smith, the team's former head coach, was also relieved of his duties, which one is due to his performance. He had not won more than 7 games in his 3 seasons in Atlanta, but I also think that he was an advocate for Desmond Ridder and that quarterback room and really wasn't super vocal about going out and wanting to acquire a new starter at the position. So Atlanta had to hire a new coaching staff, and they went out and hired the Rams defensive coordinator and Raheem Morris, reuniting him in Atlanta, where he did serve as the interim head coach in 2020 and assistant head coach for multiple years during the 2010s. And I thought Morris was a solid addition to the coaching staff. Usually when you do move on from a coach, the owner and the organization tries to kind of get the opposite of the coach they just fired. And in this case, Arthur Smith, who was an offensive mind, a first-time head coach, Atlanta elected to go on the defensive side of the ball and someone that did have a ton of top-end experience. I think Morris has proven himself to be one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. He shows off great leadership skills in many of the press conferences and team meetings that I've seen, but I do push back against defensive hires in 2024. With how offensive the league is, it's more important than ever to have a good relationship with your quarterback, know what you're doing on that side of the ball, and having some sort of influence. The thing I do like about Morris, though, compared to other defensive coordinators that have become head coaches, is Morris has spent a lot of time in the Shanahan and McVay coaching tree. He knows a lot of offensive coaches that have worked with McVay or Shanahan in that tree and know the system. So he has the ability to bring them to the Atlanta Falcons and then implement that sort of offense, which has proven to be super, super successful. And that is exactly what he did this offseason, bringing in the Rams former quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator in Zach Robinson. But as I stated earlier in this video, they still needed themselves a starting quarterback. And what the Falcons proceeded to do in the months of March and April will probably go down as some of the craziest moves an organization has made regarding that position in NFL history. They went out on the free agent market and signed the best available quarterback in Kirk Cousins. And Cousins theoretically was a perfect fit in this offense. He has a lot of experience in this West Coast system. He had proven himself over the last several years to be a very, very good quarterback. And not many players of his caliber find themselves on the free agent market. The problem, though, and why Kirk most likely was available was due to the injury he suffered in last NFL season, tearing his Achilles at the age of 36 years old. But Atlanta, in desperate need of a starting quarterback and somebody to just bring some stability to the organization, they gave him over $100 million to be their quarterback. And when they offered that contract, they were betting on Kirk just being able to maintain what he's been able to do the last couple of years, while also being able to stay healthy for the next several years as their team's starting quarterback. But because of all the money that they gave to Kirk Cousins, the Falcons were really on bargain shopping the rest of free agency. Really, the only other major deal they made was signing wide receiver Darnell Mooney to a 3-year, $39 million deal to be their wide receiver too. So many people, including myself, thought, hey, the Falcons just got themselves their quarterback, and now in the NFL draft, they're going to use their number 8 overall pick and the rest of their premium picks to really attack the rest of the needs on this team, as they now seem to be in win now mode. I did so many mock drafts throughout the draft process, and pretty much in every single one of them, I had the Falcons either taking an edge rusher, a defensive tackle, or even a cornerback, but not for 1 second did I think they were going to spend that top 10 pick on another quarterback. But on draft night, documented by my live stream, my jaw dropped when the card was turned in and Adam Schefter came on live TV and said the Falcons have been zeroing in on Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington, and he's going to be the selection in the quarterback 2 behind Kirk Cousins, who they just paid a fortune to. And unsurprisingly, this has become one of the most controversial topics in the NFL currently, and Atlanta Falcon fans get very defensive when somebody does push back against the thought process of signing a quarterback for $100 million and then spending another top 10 pick on one. I've stated it in a couple of videos that if they really did like Michael Penix Jr. as a prospect, they should have spent their Kirk Cousins money on somebody to help them on the defensive line immediately, like a Christian Wilkins, because Penix played 6 years of college football. He's 24 years old. He is a ready-made product right now. He does not need to sit 2 years. He does not need to develop anymore. He's ready to go right now. And for a team that is in win now mode, they're pretty much not going to have any return on their investment for the next 2 to 3 years. And Falcon fans have commented on some of my videos and said, hey, the organization targeted this guy. They really wanted him. And now there's also a contingency plan for Kirk Cousins. It's actually a pretty smart draft pick. And my counter to that would be exactly what I just said. If the organization always liked Michael Penix, they should have just stuck with him as their starter and used their other resources to improve the overall roster talent. And a contingency plan for Kirk Cousins does make sense since he is coming off of that major Achilles injury, but there were a lot better ways they could have gone about it. They could have signed a free agent quarterback, another one like Sam Darnold, for example. They could have used a mid-round pick on a quarterback, maybe like a Spencer Rattler. Overall, I just think their use of resources was flawed, and now they're going to be shelving this player for 2 years that is ready to start right now. But what I will say is I really have liked some of the recent moves the Falcons organization has made to continue to build this team for right now and get them in a position to make the playoffs and be a threat come December and January. And that is where we find ourselves today after a fantastic week by the Falcons, making 2 huge plays to add to their defense. That was my biggest gripe about taking Michael Penix in the top 10, is that they were sacrificing other units on their team that really needed some help. Their defensive line and pass rush, in my opinion, was one of the worst in the league heading into this season. Their secondary outside of Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell had so many question marks, and they seemingly patched up those 2 holes, getting 2 massive additions and impact players. The first one being Matthew Judon, an edge rusher from the New England Patriots. They traded a 3rd round pick to acquire him, and this trade was an A+ for the Falcons, in my opinion. Judon is not going to be a player for the future. He is 32 years old, on the last year of his contract. It's unknown currently if the Falcons are going to extend him. His contract situation is a big reason why the New England Patriots decided to trade him. He's been causing some issues in Patriots training camp, holding out some days, having some arguments with their head coach and Gerard Mayo. And the Patriots ultimately just had enough and kind of realized that they're not going to be winning anything this year. Why hold this guy hostage? So they got a premium pick back for him, and the Falcons got a great pass rusher off the edge. Just 2 years ago, he had 15.5 sacks and made a Pro Bowl. Last year, again, he was very good. The problem was he suffered an injury and missed most of the season. And when you do acquire these players that are over 30 years old, that is the risk that you run into. So for the Falcons, it's pretty simple. If this guy can stay on the field and produce, this is going to be a home run trade for them. But they were not done adding to their defense. Another weakness that I mentioned that they had on this team was their secondary. And after second-year safety DeMarco Hellum suffered a pretty severe ankle injury against the Dolphins, where he's going to miss some extended time, the Falcons picked up the phone and called Justin Simmons the best remaining free agent on the market, and they signed him to a 1-year, $8 million deal. And again, another A+ move for the Atlanta Falcons. So they add an impact player off the edge in Judon, an impact player at free safety to combine with Jesse Bates. And now I think their defense is a whole lot better, and I expect this defense to be very good next year. The Falcons have been big favorites to win the NFC South all off season long, and initially I didn't buy into that. I compared their roster talent to the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and didn't think they had a drastic advantage over those teams. I kind of compared it to last year with the New Orleans Saints, where they had a very solid foundation but just no answer at the quarterback position, and then they went out in free agency and paid Derek Carr a ton of money, who had proven himself to be a solid, serviceable quarterback, and everybody was like, hey, the New Orleans Saints, they're going to win this division. The New Orleans Saints, they're the easy pick to win this division. And then they did not win the division. And for a few months this offseason, I was like, are the Atlanta Falcons really going to be much different than that team from last year? I mean, maybe they win 8 or 9 games, but I don't think they're a slam dunk to just win this division all of a sudden. So I slightly thought Atlanta was being overhyped, but now after getting 2 more impact players on 2 very weak positions on this roster, I'm a lot more bullish on the Falcons being able to win this division and also be a threat come the postseason. I did always think the offense was going to be very solid with all the weaponry that they have, a very nice offensive line, and then adding a veteran quarterback who has proven himself. itself, but the defensive side was just lacking a little bit of talent for me to fully buy into them. But after a couple of these key additions deep into training camp, I think the Falcons have positioned themselves fairly nicely for the 2024 season. But I want to know what you think about the Atlanta Falcons and these recent signings and what you think this means for the team this season. Do you think they have a good chance to win the NFC South, or do you still have some questions? Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. But subscribe to the channel if you are new. Drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.